When Joseph Giuliano's name surfaced in whispers tied to Meghan Markle's alleged secret marriage, most dismissed it as tabloid fiction. But now, with Thomas Markle stepping forward and alleging not only a teenage marriage but also the abandonment of a child, Giuliano's presence becomes a crucial thread in a hidden narrative. The notion that Meghan may have been married and given birth before her public rise, only to erase those details, casts a heavy shadow.
If you love getting the real story behind the palace walls, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and tap the notification bell so you never miss an update.
Her decision to remain silent has amplified the sense that this isn't just rumor, but a story meticulously buried for decades. The questions now aren't about curiosity, they're about credibility. Can a public figure who champions truth afford to live with such contradictions? With online profiles altered, anonymous accounts linked to Giuliano shifting, and striking similarities in photos of a child alleged to be Meghan's, digital sleuths aren't just speculating, they're compiling. And as scrutiny deepens, Meghan's once unshakable image is being recast not by scandal alone, but by the evidence that keeps slipping through the cracks of a narrative. Thomas Markle is not exactly known for his subtlety, but even by his standards, this was a bombshell. In a recent interview, he dropped the kind of allegation that can't be ignored, even by the most PR-armored members of the royal orbit.
If you love getting the real story behind the palace walls, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and tap the notification bell so you never miss an update.
According to Thomas, Meghan Markle had a secret child when she was just 19 years old. And not just that, he claims she abandoned the baby girl in an orphanage and never looked back. The internet, predictably, exploded. It wasn't just a child claim that made people's jaws drop. Thomas says the child came from a brief, concealed marriage between Meghan and a man named Joseph Giuliano, allegedly a young lawyer she was involved with during her college years. If true, that would mean Meghan had an entire marriage and child before stepping into the royal spotlight, and managed to erase both from the public. This isn't just messy, it's potentially narrative-shattering. Meghan has built her entire brand on empowerment, family values, and transparency. From her speeches on mental health to her advocacy for women's rights, she's cultivated the image of a woman who overcame adversity through authenticity. But if her own father's claims are true, then there's an entire chapter of her life she's never mentioned, and actively covered up. And it gets worse. Thomas pointed out that Meghan's royal wedding was notably absent of family. Aside from her mother, Doria Ragland, none of Meghan's other relatives were there. That silence, that empty aisle, takes on new meaning when you consider what Thomas is implying. That Meghan cut off a family to avoid exposing the secret. The alleged marriage to Joseph Giuliano has become the subject of intense online scrutiny. Amateur sleuths have dug into old records, online profiles, and even Yibik photos trying to find evidence. And while nothing has been definitively proven, there are hints. Social media accounts once linked to Giuliano have been wiped clean or made private. Mentions of a past relationship have vanished, and those who might have known something seem to have gone silent at the same time. The timing of it all raises questions. Meghan was in her late teens, just starting out in college. If she did get pregnant and married quickly, only to annul it and put the baby up for adoption or into foster care, that decision would have happened under intense emotional and societal pressure. But it's the silence afterward that feels calculated, as if she needed to erase any trace of that version of herself before reinventing the one the world knows today. The claim also forces a re-evaluation of her dynamic with Prince Harry. Meghan has always positioned herself as someone who fought hard to protect her truth. Yet, the level of curation in her image, especially when stepping into royal life, has raised eyebrows before. This latest allegation throws that entire PR strategy into question, because when you're married to the fifth in line to the throne, secrets don't stay buried for long. Meghan's decision to only include her mother at the royal wedding may have been strategic, not just to avoid drama, but possibly to avoid questions. Questions like, who else from your past might show up? Who might recognize you not as a duchess, but as a woman with a very different background? The ripple effect is undeniable. Every time Meghan makes a public appearance, gives a speech, or releases a Netflix series, this claim now lurks in the background. Not because it's proven, but because it challenges the carefully maintained wall between her past and present. And it highlights a vast chasm between Meghan's tightly controlled image and the chaotic, contradictory stories told by her own family. The silence from Meghan's side isn't helping. No denials, no clarification. No legal action. Just more perfectly edited Instagram posts and PR appearances, pretending nothing has changed. But the public isn't buying it anymore. The contrast between her silence and Thomas's loud accusations only makes people more suspicious. And the royals? They've stayed completely out of it. No comment, no public support, not even a bland private family matter statement, which is its own kind of telling. The institution is no stranger to scandal, but when they choose not to defend you, especially when you've already left the royal fold, it says a lot. If the story had no legs, if it was pure fabrication, it would be easy to refute. But instead, the silence is deafening. The palace, Meghan, Harry, everyone pretending it doesn't exist, which only fuels a narrative that maybe there's something here they really don't want us to know. Even outside of the royal bubble, Meghan's public identity has taken a hit. Her past roles, her activism, her writing, all of it is now seen through a different lens. Was a woman who wrote about ambition and self-worth really hiding this kind of secret? And if she was, does that undermine everything she's claimed to stand for? People are also revisiting old interviews, dissecting her words, her pauses, her phrasing. Some clips are being reinterpreted as coded references. Others are being pulled apart for signs of guilt, avoidance, or rehearsed denial. It's become a media autopsy of her entire life, frame by frame. Prince Harry, as always, is in an impossible position. He's defended Meghan relentlessly, cut ties with his own family, and risked everything for their shared narrative. But what happens if he finds out she's been hiding something this big, not just from the public, but from him? If that's the case, the personal fallout could be enormous. There's no evidence yet that Harry knew about any of this. But people are already speculating. Was he lied to? Did he know and keep it quiet? And if he did know, was a decision to move to America and leave royal duties partly about getting ahead of this story? There's also a growing obsession with the supposed child. Who is she? Where is she now? Is she still in foster care? Or was she adopted? Does she know who her mother is? Does she look like Meghan? Online forums are filled with side-by-side comparisons of young women who bear even a faint resemblance, with users speculating about heritage and timelines. None of this would have happened if Thomas hadn't opened his mouth. But once he did, the story took on a life of its own. Whether his motive was revenge, guilt, or genuine concern isn't even the point anymore. He cracked open a door, and now the world wants to see what's behind it. And this isn't just a tabloid distraction. If proven, this story could have real consequences. Meghan's immigration records, royal status, inheritance issues, even public trust, all could be called into question. It's not just about image. It's about legitimacy. That's why people aren't letting it go. Because the stakes are too high. Meghan positioned herself as a symbol of progress, honesty, and change. But if the foundation of that image is built on omission or outright lies, it's not just a reputation that crumbles. It's the credibility of everything she touched. What keeps this story alive is not just the claim itself, but how neatly it fits into unresolved questions that have followed Meghan for years. Her past has always been presented as selective, tightly edited, and curated for public consumption. Certain years are well documented, others are oddly thin. And now, those gaps are being treated less like coincidence and more like deliberate omission. The allegation of a teenage pregnancy and secret annulled marriage reframes those missing years. It suggests that the silence wasn't accidental, but protective, not just of her career ambitions, but of a narrative she needed to preserve as she moved closer to Hollywood, activism, and eventually royalty. The public is now revisiting everything she's ever said about her early adulthood, looking for what was left unsaid. Thomas Markle insists this isn't speculation. He's been clear that he believes Meghan worked hard to bury this chapter of her life, cutting off family members who knew too much or asked the wrong questions. His claim paints family estrangement not as cruelty or dysfunction, but as damage control. He has also suggested that the speed with which Meghan distanced herself from relatives coincided with moments when her public profile began to rise. First in entertainment, then in social circles tied to influence, and finally within the royal sphere. In his telling, the more visible she became, the more dangerous the past became. For many observers, the most unsettling part isn't the alleged pregnancy itself. It's the accusation of abandonment. The idea that someone who now speaks publicly about compassion, motherhood, and generational trauma could have walked away from a child sits uncomfortably with her current messaging. That contradiction is what fuels the outrage and disbelief. Supporters argue that even if such a pregnancy occurred, decisions made at 19 under pressure should not define someone forever. Critics respond that the issue isn't the pregnancy, it's the secrecy, the alleged abandonment, and the continued silence. In that tension, Meghan's image becomes a battlefield. The royal context magnifies everything. Meghan didn't just marry into a famous family. She married into an institution built on lineage, legitimacy, and public trust. Any suggestion of hidden family ties or unresolved personal history inevitably raises questions about vetting, disclosure, and transparency. While Meghan and Harry are no longer working royals, their titles and global influence keep them tethered to the monarchy's reputation. That's why this allegation carries weight beyond gossip. If unresolved, it reinforces the idea that uncomfortable truths were overlooked or intentionally ignored during her integration into royal life. Their joint public brand has always centered on truth-telling. From televised interviews to long-form documentaries, Meghan and Harry have framed themselves as victims of secrecy, manipulation, and institutional silence. That framing now feels precarious. Because if Meghan herself withheld something this significant, critics argue it undermines the moral authority of those claims. It introduces a possibility that the couple's battle with secrecy wasn't about principle, but about control over which truths were allowed to surface. The digital sleuthing hasn't slowed. Online communities continue to comb through archived pages, cached profiles, and fragmented references tied to Joseph Giuliano and anyone who might have known Meghan during that period. While none of this constitutes proof, the sheer volume of activity shows how deeply the story has embedded itself in public consciousness. Each deleted account or changed username is treated as confirmation. Each silence becomes suspicious. In the absence of clarity, speculation fills a gap, growing louder and more elaborate with time. Harry's role remains ambiguous. He has stood by Meghan through relentless scrutiny before, but this situation is different. It doesn't involve tabloids or palisades. It involves her own family and allegations that predate their relationship by decades. If he knew, his silence becomes a shared burden. If he didn't, it introduces a fracture not just in public trust, but in their marriage narrative. Either way, his continued silence ensures the questions won't stop. At the center of all of this is Meghan's refusal to respond. No statement, no denial, no legal challenge. In a media landscape where silence often speaks louder than words, that choice is being interpreted in every possible direction. For some, it's dignity. For others, it's evasion. And for many, it's a final piece that keeps the story alive. Until there's clarity, the allegations will continue to circulate, reshaping how Meghan's past is understood and how her future is judged. At this point, Meghan Markle's silence isn't just a PR strategy, it's a narrative in itself. People aren't just waiting for denial anymore. They are dissecting her avoidance like it's a press release. Every post, every red carpet appearance, every carefully worded interview clip is being examined for hidden meaning, strategic omission, or passive acknowledgement. But all they are getting is a polished smile and curated captions. She's gone radio silent on the one thing people are actually talking about. And that silence feels especially calculated, because the longer she waits, the more it feels like there's something to hide. And when you're facing accusations of abandoning a child, the stakes for staying quiet couldn't be higher. What makes this even more volatile is how it clashes with the narrative she and Harry have spent years building. They position themselves as truth-tellers, victims of manipulative press, survivors of institutional control. They left the UK to protect their family. But what if the version of the family being protected wasn't entirely true to begin with? It reframes everything. From Oprah to Spotify to Netflix, their entire brand of authenticity is now sitting on a fault line. Because this isn't just a salacious claim from a bitter father. This is about whether Meghan's story was ever truly honest. And if it wasn't, then what's left? Thomas Markle has been messy for years. That's not new, but has never dropped a claim this serious. Sure, he's done interviews, sold stories, and made bitter comments. But this accusation? This is next level. And is sticking to it. No retractions. No, I misspoke. His doubling down. That confidence is what's giving people pause, because it means he either believes what he's saying or he has something, some kind of proof, a name, a record, a whisper from someone in Meghan's past who saw something, knew something, or has been waiting for this storm to arrive. And the longer he keeps pushing, the more people wonder if he's holding onto a card he hasn't played yet. What's so damaging is how easily this story fits into the cracks that were already there. Meghan's carefully constructed public image has always had blind spots. There were things that didn't quite line up, family relationships that suddenly ended, timelines that skipped, and a string of former friends who never spoke again. This latest claim fills in those blanks. It creates a reason for the severed ties, the sudden rise, the extreme control over her narrative. Suddenly, it's not about ambition. It's about covering tracks. And whether that's fair or not, it's a story that people are running with. Harry's involvement, or lack thereof, is starting to raise its own set of uncomfortable questions. People aren't just asking what Meghan knew. They're asking what Harry knew, and when. If he didn't know, that's a massive betrayal. If he did know and helped keep it quiet, that's a credibility crisis. And let's be real, this is the same couple that told the world about their miscarriage, about suicidal ideation, about racism inside the royal family. They've never shied away from using personal pain to make a point. So why not this? Why is this the one thing they won't touch? Meanwhile, the royals are doing what they do best, saying absolutely nothing. The silence from Buckingham Palace is standard protocol. But this time, it benefits them. Every day this drama drags on, Meghan's credibility suffers. And for monarchy still stinging from the Sussex's exit, that's not a bad outcome. There's no need for rebuttals or official statements. The palace can just sit back, sip their tea, and let the public draw its own conclusions. The longer Meghan remains silent, the more the royal family's strategy of stiff upper lip starts to look like wisdom. And let's not forget, this isn't the first time Meghan's personal history has come under scrutiny. From her half-siblings to ex-friends to old colleagues, there's been a chorus of voices saying, she's not who she pretends to be. Until now, those voices were easy to dismiss as petty or jealous. But Thomas's claim? It's different. It hits harder. It implies not just a lie, but a life-altering one. If she truly had a child and left that child behind, it wouldn't just be a scandal. It would be a moral reckoning. The kind of thing that doesn't just change public opinion, but leaves a permanent... And yes, there's already comparison creeping in. People are putting Meghan side by side with Catherine, Princess of Wales. One is now seen as traditional, composed, and transparent. The other? Strategic, elusive, and potentially dishonest. It's a narrative the tabloids have leaned into for years, but now it's got fuel. That contrast becomes more glaring by the day. Catherine is fighting health rumors with poise. Meghan is dodging family scandals with silence. Whether that comparison is fair doesn't even matter anymore. It's happening, and it's reshaping how people perceive them both. This story isn't staying in the tabloids. It's bleeding into every layer of Meghan's public life. Brand partnerships, production deals, social justice campaigns. Every headline is now accompanied by side eyes and silent questions. People don't just want to know what Meghan is working on. They want to know what she's hiding. The trust has shifted. It's not just gossip anymore. It's a test of authenticity. Because when you build a reputation on transparency and vulnerability, hiding something this major isn't just a contradiction. It's a betrayal of the very values you sold to the public. And Harry? He's not escaping the fallout. He may not be the one at the center of the claim, but is tied to it now. His image as a loyal husband, the one who gave up everything for love, is under pressure. Because if it turns out he was in the dark, it's devastating. But if he was in on it, if he knew about a secret child and stayed silent, that opens up a new level of criticism. Everything they've done together, from royal exits to media ventures, is now being seen through a more skeptical lens. Were they really fighting for truth, or just fighting to protect a version of it that suited them? Thomas, for all his baggage, knows exactly what kind of chaos is kicked off, and is not backing down. Every time the media cycle starts to calm down, he drops another breadcrumb, another comment, another jab. Whether it's out of resentment or revenge doesn't even matter anymore. He's steering the conversation. And let's be honest, it is lying, has made it remarkably difficult to disprove, because the kind of denial that would shut this down entirely, it's never come. Not from Meghan, not from Harry, not from anyone in their orbit. And that's exactly why the speculation keeps going. The absence of any legal action is what really has people scratching their heads. If someone accused you of abandoning a child in your teens, and it wasn't true, you'd fight it. Especially someone like Meghan, who's gone to court over far less. She's sued tabloids, fought back against false narratives, and demanded corrections for things that barely scratched the surface. But this is the loudest silence of her career. And the longer she waits, the more it looks like a calculated risk. Like she's hoping the storm will pass on its own. But this time, it's not just noise. It's a foundational question about who she really is. And those questions don't fade. They just grow. Back in the UK, this entire saga is being watched with barely concealed satisfaction. The royal family may not be commenting publicly, but sources close to the institution have made it clear they're not coming to Meghan's defense. That bridge was burned long ago. And now, the same silence Meghan once used against the royals is being used against her. It's a full circle moment. When she accused the institution of failing to protect her, the world listened. Now, she's the one on the receiving end of uncomfortable questions, and there's no one rushing in to shield her. Not the press, not the palace, not even the public she once had wrapped around her finger. This story had become more than a family feud. It's about legacy, reputation, truth, and the risk of building a public identity on a half-told story. If you've got thoughts on this mess, or theories on what might be coming next, drop them below. And if you want to stay in the loop as this saga keeps unfolding, make sure you're subscribed, hit that like button, and share this with someone who's definitely going to have an opinion.